And now the next definition, hunger. Hunger is a condition in which people lack the required nutrients. Now that's both macronutrients, protein, carbohydrates, fats, micronutrients, and micronutrients. And in this course, you will hear me talk quite a bit about the macronutrient aspect of things. This is micronutrients meaning vitamins and minerals, all of which are important elements that all of us need, especially as children, as we're growing, to grow strong, to develop our mental capacity so that we can be productive, healthy, and active members of our community. Hunger, again, as we define it, short-term, chronic, acute, or hidden hunger, and then physical and mental hunger sensation, which is a short-term type of thing. So short-term, of course, is simply missing a meal. That's obvious. Chronic is more long-term. Acute, sudden again, and hidden can be obesity, for example. Hunger that appears to be not an issue, but they're underlying problems of nutrition. And then simply the physical and mental hunger sensation, which I'll come to next. These are all quite different concepts of hunger. So short-term is simply a transitory, mild form of hunger that temporarily affects you, your mental and your physical capacity. So the example that we've given earlier of school children, simply missing a meal, coming to school. All of you who have been to college or are in college now, you know you roll out of bed late for the 8 o'clock, rush into class, you've missed breakfast. Okay, that is short-term hunger. You have that funny feeling and maybe you're not paying much attention. And again, the teacher notices this. But this is a mild, it's a transitory form of hunger. And you note, hey, I'm a little hungry and I'm maybe not 100% up to snuff here. But it will pass as soon as you have your next meal. Then there's chronic hunger. And chronic is what we typically see in many parts of the world among the bottom billion that I keep talking about, where people are chronically suffering long-term from lack of food. And again, this is not necessarily famine. Famine is a word that we use very rarely in our line of work. Famine is, think the Great Irish Famine 150 years ago in Ireland, where people were literally dropping dead on the street. And you've had examples of that in more recent history as well. But fortunately, in our day today, in this age that is somewhat rare, you often don't have the luxury, if you will, or the benefit of dying that way. I mean, you die from disease that you would otherwise have recovered from. So it's because you have an underlying lack of good nutrition and caloric intake. And in situations like this, those who suffer from chronic hunger, they're eating food, usually not sufficient by any means, but it becomes their normal condition, just chronic hunger and hunger pangs. They feel hungry virtually all the time. And then acute hunger is different, related, but acute hunger is when, bingo, it happens now. Acute hunger would have been most recently the example in the Haiti earthquake in Port-au-Prince, where people who were otherwise had access to food, were living in a stable environment from a food and food security perspective, suddenly went to no food. People in Port-au-Prince in particular, who obviously are not probably growing food in the city, and depending on their income to buy food, all of a sudden the stores are gone, the food's gone. That's serious acute hunger, and this is often the times when there's a high death rate, because many of those who otherwise are not suffering from hunger, when they go from sufficient food to no food, that's often when the worst problems develop, and they have difficulties coping. And the same can be from a shock to do with the drought or a conflict or an earthquake, as I mentioned. Then there's hidden hunger. Hidden hunger is when people lack essential micronutrients, the vitamins, the micronutrients that I was talking about earlier. They are consuming sufficient macronutrients, calories, that is, they have sufficient macronutrition, if you will. But the problem, so that would be carbohydrates and fats and proteins and such, but not in the proper ratios. And they have situations where they look as if they're eating enough food, but there's an underlying hidden hunger problem, is that they're not getting the essential micronutrients. I'll come back to that after, but that is a key issue for many to try to understand the obesity epidemic that we have in many countries, including this one. So now for the technical side of the hunger discussion, this is now the physical aspect of hunger, the sensation. There is an enzyme called ghrelin, Gherlin, that's released in the stomach, and it causes the glycogen levels in your blood to go down. And that is simply a message that, oh, I need some food. And that hunger sensation is created in the hypothalamus there, in the top, in the green. And in turn, the message then goes to your mouth, right, to the muscles and food, and you organize that you get something to eat, goes in your body, and comes down into your stomach, and resolves that issue of your brain telling you you have a need for food, that you're hungry, quote. And those are the other hormones, and they're released in the stomach. That then completes that cycle. That satiation, that feeling of feeling full, is then this concept that you've had enough to eat. And oftentimes that takes 15 or 20 minutes after you've had a meal to actually kick in, which is often a reason why many, especially in the first world countries, tend to overeat at times. They're eating more because it takes a while for that satiation feeling to then kick in. Ghrelin helps to trigger the hunger sensation, and the levels rise before meals, but they fall after them. So throughout your day, as you can see here, ghrelin is going up and down, based on the 24-hour cycle, breakfast, lunch, dinner, or different meals that you would fit in there. Ghrelin's been called then the hunger hormone, but in fact, there's lots of hormones involved. There's the mental side of this, the mental side of the hunger sensation. Cultural, society factors, meal times when you eat. Certain parts of the first world, the Mediterranean countries, for example, eat very late. Other countries, like you may have situations where the meal times are much earlier. Some people eat more for breakfast than others. Some people skip breakfast completely. The color of food. These are all cultural and different factors in our societies which determine when we eat and how much we eat, what we prefer to eat. And then there are the emotional factors of stress, repulsion, anger. Some people eat more when they're stressed, some eat less. Some aspects of this can be quite serious depending on your mental state.